All right. I think I did this right. I didn't even try to go live on Instagram. I'm doing something wrong. I'm giving up on that for now. I'll have to do a research project. So, welcome to the Logmouth Bass Podcast. Continuing over from our jokes from yesterday. What's up, Jack? The name of the podcast came from some jokes we were making last night. If you want to see something funny, watch about the last 20 minutes of last night's live stream. Frank, what's up? Jack, what's up? Yeah, last night was funny. John, what's up? We had a good time. So tonight will be the Logmouth Bass Podcast to keep the joke running. Kirk, Mike, what's up, everyone? All right, I had a point, and the point was what are we going to talk about? And one fella did have some questions, so he can lead with those. Anthony, if you get here, whenever, just throw the questions up there, man. What were we talking about? I had a point. What's up, boys? Thanks for joining. Brown Bait says he threw an 11-inch bull shad all day today. So your arms feel like putty. The question is, what did you catch with the 11-inch bull shad today, my friend? Or did you at least have any follows? Because follows are important. So one thing about the big baits that I do like, you get those follows, and that gives you an idea of where those big fish are at. Even if you don't catch them, you'll see them, and you'll be like, all right, next time I come here, I know right there we had that big fish following that bait, and that's important too, because that directly correlates to like electrofishing. I had a bunch of places and a bunch of different lakes that I electrofished over the years that, I don't know, without the electrofishing boat, I wouldn't know that they consistently held bass there. There didn't seem to be anything there that would tip you off other than, I don't know, maybe an abrupt depth change, some wood or whatever. Subtle things, though, that would really hold fish year after year after year in the same areas. So I would say the glide bait type fishing, the big bait type fishing, like I said, even though you're not hooking fish all the time or having you're drawing fish up, you'll get fish to follow that thing and look at it, like, what in the world? All right, back to the post. I'm looking at my tablet because I had. Oh, right. Yeah. So Brandon said he's got caught a 3, and why a 3-pounder thinks he can eat 11-inch bait, who knows? But he's brave. Give him credit for being brave. Right. Yeah. So we'll start the discussion, I guess, with the aging. And I did a post just now, and there's been a lot of misinformation around that aging, how bass put on weight and age, and how that works. So egg weight. Just talk a little bit about that. I'll get the conversation going, and we'll move on from there if anybody's got questions. So right now, Clint sent in a picture of a bass he caught was 4 pounds that we stocked in spring of 2022 in the pond. So as soon as that bass was stocked, it went into basically a perfect situation. It went into a situation where there was a bluegill only population, and for a pond, that's ideal. It had those bluegill are being fed too, so they're kind of like almost like performance enhancing drugs on that bluegill population. And that's why the bass did as well as it did. But it went from it was stocked in the spring, and then it went to the fall. It grew that whole growing season during its warm. But once the water temperatures drop down below 60s, fish don't grow anymore. So then same thing, spring to fall 2023, this past season that we just had, that fish had another growing season, and then Clint just caught it right now in that interim period in the suspended time in the fall. It's just about to start the growing period again for the third season, and it was a 4-pound fish. So we've had 2 growing seasons, and we've got a 4-pound fish, so we've got 2 pounds per growing season, and that bass growing really, really well. Nice fish. All right. That's different than a female bass putting on egg weight. Okay, a female bass eating a lot and putting on egg weight is putting energy into eggs. So she will be heavier during the spawning season, but she's not putting on growth. She's not putting on length. She's not putting on girth into her body. She's putting on all the energy that she's consuming is going into putting into eggs. Energy to grow the eggs and to reproduce. So yes, she will be heavier. Like, for example, a 24-inch bass in a reasonably healthy pond that says it's 8 pounds on our standard weight chart. In a healthy, good year on a young fish, that fish could weigh 10 pounds. She could have 2 pounds of egg weight. I've seen that plenty of times. And a 24-inch fish that's normally an 8-pounder in your pond is a 10-pounder for right when it's plump, right before the eggs pop, right before they spawn. There's literally like 2 pounds of egg weight on that fish. But when they have those eggs, that the weight goes away immediately, and she returns back to a 24-inch fish that weighs 8 pounds and is 100, but still 100% relative weight fish. She would have had a ridiculous relative weight at 10 pounds and 24 inches. It would have been like 135% or something like that. But we know when we see that, as science, it's like, okay, the fish is 142% relative weight, but she's obviously flipping packed full of eggs. But that's also an indicator of health, because female bass that can put that much egg weight on is an indicator they have an abundance of forage. Brown's got a question. It's a good one. What causes fish not to grow? It's cold blooded. It's through how they are. All fish are that way. They only grow when it's warm. So, they have that animated period, and it's not that they don't eat in the winter. Obviously, they'll eat a little bit in the wintertime, but they just don't grow. So they kind of grow like plants, only when it's warm. You can see it on the fish scales, because the fish scales lay down growth rings very similar to how a tree lays down growth rings. Like when you cut a tree and you can count the rings, and what you're counting on the rings is the growth rings get laid down at the same period of time, and then the growth occurs, and then another growth ring goes down. Well, in the wintertime, the growth ring goes down, but the tree doesn't grow. So the next growth ring that gets laid down really close to the first one in this winter. So as those growth rings go down on a tree or on a fish scale, they get really close together during the wintertime because the fish or the tree isn't really growing. So you're counting, when you look at a fish scale, when you dye a fish scale and do it right, and you're counting those bands on the fish scale, you're just counting the winters that it's been alive. And that's not the most accurate way to age a fish, because it could have like damaged scales, and like they could do, there's quite a lot that could go on there. But It does, it'll get you the ballpark most of the time. And you don't have to kill the fish just to pull some scales and look at and see how old they are. If you use their ear bone, it's inside their head and you have to cut that out. And that's a more accurate way. It works the same way, but it's a more accurate way to get the age of the fish, but you have to kill the fish to get the age, to get it that accurate. There's Anthony right there. What happens if you over harvest bass? That's a good question. Okay, so it depends on how the bass are being over harvested. But there's a couple ways I've seen it. Like if it's a small pond and you've just got guys who keep a lot of fish, but it's generally a really small pond, less than 5 acres. Usually guys don't keep enough fish to even mess with a 5-acre pond, honestly. Okay, you're saying small pond. Okay, so if we have a small pond, we have to be aware of the limitations of that pond. Okay, because you can't over harvest it. Now, again, it comes into our balance idea, right? So let's just go with like a 1-acre pond, and I'm going to go with Georgia because I know those numbers and they're pretty easy. But these numbers can fluctuate a little bit, but they're usually the same most places within. Like, let's put it this way, it'll work good enough. All right. For anywhere. We can apply this to anywhere. So if you have a pond and it's balanced properly and either a fisherman goes in and over harvests the bass population just by keeping too many, how many would that be? Okay. When you start keeping like 21-pound bass per acre per year, that would be how you would correct a bass heavy population, right? You would do that for a couple of seasons. And then you would need to drop off to about 10 pounds of bass per acre per year as a maintenance. So if you're removing 10 pounds of bass per acre per year, or 100 1-pound bass in a 10-acre pond, you're taking a harvestable rate that really won't even change the fish population. It'll just kind of maintain the balance. If it's a bass heavy pond and you're taking 10 pounds, it'll stay bass heavy. If it's a balanced pond and you're taking 10 pounds, it'll probably stay balanced. And if you bump that up to 20 pounds per acre and you start taking more than that 10, you're going to start dropping the numbers of bass per acre. And you're going to see significantly improved growth in each individual bass. But as you drop under 35 bass per acre, you'll have several problems. One, the bass get incredibly difficult to catch. They get really well fed. They're chewing all the time. And when they're in that situation, the pond is so full of bait too, because it's so few bass in there, that it's really full of forage fish everywhere. And the bass and the relative weights get real high. That's the first indicator you'll see, is the relative weight on the bass starts getting to that 140%, 150% relative weight. But it's not the spawn even. It's like, the middle of the summer or fall or whatever, and the fish are just absolute units thick. Well, that's an indicator there's too few bass per acre when the relative weights are that high. So the problem you get there is, yeah, that's great. The bass are growing big and they're huge and thick, but you don't get successful bass reproduction when their numbers get that low, because they can't protect their nests against that many bluegill and other fish species in the pond. The balance is too far in favor of the forage fish. So then you start losing your bass reproduction, and then those bass will live their life and die, but you'll have no recruitment. You'll have no baby bass coming in. And then at that point, you've lost your bass population, and since you don't have any bass at all, the bluegill or whatever bait fish that you have will become very overcrowded, and they get about that big, about yay big. And the one way you can tell when you've got an overcrowded bluegill population that's been there for a few years is their eyes and their heads, but mostly their eyes are the only things that continue to grow. So you'll have this little tiny little fish like that big, but like a bluegill, but its eye will be really big for its head and stuff. You look at it, it looks funny looking. Stunted fish will get that look. And to correct that, that can be tricky to correct. If even if you add bigger bass in there, sometimes that doesn't work. To correct that, it's usually easier to drain that lake and just start it from scratch as well. When fish get stunted, the drain and restock process is the best way to go, the most cost effective way to go. So if you're in a pond, Anthony, where like what I just described can happen, where your bass population just kind of disappears and goes away, crappie will do that to a pond too. When you get crappie in your pond, they eat the they eat the reproduction right as it's born. And year after year after year, if the spawn sets up just right, which usually it does, you'll have a reduction in your bass. Let's put it this way. I've seen bass populations vanish from ponds due to crappie populations. And you'll go out there with an electric fishing boat, turn it on, and there's a whole pond full of hand-sized, paper-thin crappie and no bass in it. And it just sometimes that happens. So that would be one way that Mother Nature can take your bass population away from you, is just simply by stocking crappie. That's small pond management, and a lot of guys don't even know that. They just think you should be putting crappie in your pond because they're in the lake, so they should be in the pond. And it's not a lake, right? That's where we have to be smart and use where the research science that's been proven and say, hey, you know what? It's actually way better just to have bluegill on a feeder with my bass as a forage base in a pond than to take everything over here from the swamp, every species of fish on earth, and throw it in my pond. That's what guys usually do, and that's just where you guys usually screw up. Usually I don't have not seen very many ponds that are over harvested by fishermen. We were having that discussion on Instagram a minute ago about forward facing sonar. Like, what's my stance on forward facing? And it's like, okay, I'm listening to guys debate forward facing sonars ruining fishing by somehow there's some magic fish harvest that I'm not seeing. Because again, did you hear the numbers that I just said? If you have a 20,000 acre lake, do you know how many hundreds of thousands of 1 pound bass you've got to take out of that to even significantly impact the bass population? A smidge. Like, everybody who's having this debate's got empty coolers and empty live wells. I don't see the point in sitting here talking about it until you start getting like the bank fishermen. Oh, it's all the bank fishermen taking the fish. Oh, it is? I thought that was the entire reason we had boats. Since when is sitting on the bank the most effective way of catching bass? And how are those guys catching all the bass? And if they are, why do you even have a boat? Because the last time I hung out with the bank dudes, they're jacking some bluegill and some brim and some crappie, and they're not even bass fishing. So how are they keeping all the bass and ruining the bass? And these are all the excuses I hear from guys that don't make any sense to me, that I can't have conversations about lake management, because the reality of the situation is the fish population itself has changed to where the bass aren't being produced in it the way we just described. Crappie have changed it. Green sunfish have changed it. Asian carp have changed it. Snakeheads have changed it. Tilapia have changed it, or any combination of all 5 of those have changed it. Because when you start getting bad fishing, you've got bad fish population balance, not bad habitat. And I'm positive that's right, because I've watched it in my ponds. We'll take a brand new 5-acre pond, build all the perfect habitat, put everything in there, and for the first 5-6 years or whatever, the fish grow just like they're growing right now, and 2.5 pounds a season at Sugar Hill, just growing like rockets, right? But then all of a sudden that changes. It stops. None of the habitat in that pond at year 6 changed. Everything that we put in, all the gravel, all the brush, all the things are still there, but you'll see the fish population change and wander off and things will start happening to it. Usually it's because other fish have entered that fish population from a stream, and that those fish populations have grown and changed the growth of the bass population or the bluegill population. It's complex. Ain't none of this stuff easy. That's a good question. There's a question here. Will catfish in a pond cause the same problem as crappie? No, but all right. So you got channel. It depends on the catfish too. I mean, catfish is a very broad term to use. If we're talking about channel catfish, no worries. Channel catfish actually mix into ponds pretty well. Now, where you run into problems with channels and why we've actually got a few of them. They came downstream. There's a channel catfish pond upstream from Sugar Hill, and we've had a few come in there. And actually, we've got one out of there last year that was 6 pounds. And that brings up a good point. That's why I don't use them on fed ponds like this particular scenario. Those channel catfish love feed. And I don't want channel in this scenario where we're trying to grow bass and it's a 2.5 acre system. And that's the primary goal is bass growth. I want all the feed going to bluegill because that's bass forage. I need to make that process as efficient as possible. I don't want anything getting in the way of that. I want every dollar because my feed is super expensive. It's like $70 to $80 a bag. I don't even know what Clint's paying, but high protein feed is super expensive. So if it's going to catfish, the catfish are growing well, and I'll grow catfish out to about 7 or 8 pounds in 2 seasons. And the amount of time I've grown these fish, if I had more catfish in there, I would have 5, 6, 7 pound catfish right now too. The problem is though, I don't want them because a 5, 6, 7 pound catfish, it now has grown up to the point where it's predatory and competing with bass. Now, is it like the same thing as having a 5 pound bass in there? No, but you still have a big 5, 6, 7 pound fish that's partially a predator that can be competing with your bass, and you'll have an unnaturally high number of them with a feeder. So I've seen that where the catfish population does really good around the feeder, and then there's a lot of really 10 pounds when they start getting north of 10. There's 50, 10 pound catfish. They start eating the other fish, right? You start to see the other fish go away when you've got that many really big giant catfish. Like it's like, okay, you're gonna have to get some of the big catfish out. They're too big for the pond. There's too much predators. Now that'll happen real quick if you mess around and put like a flathead catfish in a pond. You don't want a flathead catfish anywhere near a pond. That's just a mistake. I've seen some blue catfish in small lakes, but they usually don't do too much trouble. Like they don't overcrowd growing wise. Kind of rare, really. Haven't seen that many in my blues in my career. The ones I did see were units. I mean, big 30-inch plus fish, big blues, but don't really see them too much. Frank wants to know. Frank's making fun of everyone again, just for some reason. Be careful in the comment section. Frank's on the prowl, gentlemen. You're bound to be made fun of. All right, so you're interested in what happens when there's lots of bullheads. Well, generally what happens when there's lots of bullheads is people from Canada move down to your lake and throw them in there like dummies. They don't have to be people from Canada, though. I was just picking on Frank. So generally speaking, bullheads can be nest raiders, egg eaters. They can disrupt the balance of the pond. Although I've had pretty good success on the ponds that I was managing, kind of managing around the bullheads. Like I felt like I could get control of them. With stocking back, well, when I was doing it, I couldn't do it now because I don't have the access to all the bass heavy water. But what I would do, the times that I had bullhead problems, Frank, were they drained the pond. They didn't kill all the fish, which contained bullheads. They didn't even come close to restocking it properly because I wasn't even involved with that part of it either. So they let it go for about 8 months or something too long, and the bullheads had a spawn, and then they tried to stock their pond, but the bullheads had already spawned in there. So basically, it was a 15-acre lake too. So they are 15-acre pond, but they ended up with a bunch of bullhead, and that was tricky. What I ended up doing was getting a couple of the guys on the that weren't associated with the HOA because it was an HOA job, but the HOA wouldn't spring for any fish feed. So I got a couple private fishermen to spring for some fish feed. Got a couple feeders going out there. That gave me the access to give the bluegill some feed, get them healthier, kind of, performance enhancing drug wise. Concentrated those bullheads around those feeders because they would eat that feed too. So I started using traps, just catfish traps around there. Electro fishing boat, pulled them out by the bajillion with it. And then I had access to largemouth bass and a lot of them. Like I had at that point in time, I probably had 2,600 acres of water under my care. And most of it was bass heavy with 1.5 pound bass. So going and getting largemouth wasn't any trouble back then. And that's exactly what I did. I put the killers in there on them. It's like, all right, I know I can get these bass back out, and I need something that's going to get all these bullheads out. So I just went and got about, I don't even remember how many it was, probably like 300 or something, 1.5 pound, 2 pound bass. Set the dogs on their A, smoked them. And then as that was happening, got the HOA to kick in for 4 to 6 inch bluegill, some bigger mature bluegill. So the ones that happened to survive could get a spawn off for us, kept the feeders rolling. And over time, the pond actually came back around, did pretty well. The bullhead population, it never went away, but at least it wasn't 8 bajillion 4 to 6 inch bullheads and nothing else. You'd have a bigger bullhead every once in a while, but then you had like a decent sport fish population in there. So I don't know. I've had that happen a few times. That was the biggest job that I've ever had to deal with, that 15 acres. But I don't know. I kind of feel like I can control bullheads. It is terribly expensive though. It's a lot of work. Okay, I'll go back up and check it, Frank. Hold on. Oh, I see what you did to me there, Frank. You snuck one in there, way up there. He sneaks the good question in there. I see that. Give me work for it, man. That's a good question, and I'm not exactly positive. He's going to lose, definitely. Probably. It's not probably going past 90%. It's not killing him. It's something he can survive. He's definitely going to go under 100. And I would say too that, like, you got to understand too, like, okay, I've never answered this question before, so you've got me thinking a way to articulate this, Frank. So you've done a good job. Okay, we have to understand relative weight scale. At 100% relative weight is an exceptional fish. Okay, it's like an A plus. At 93% and above would be an A, right? Like at 93%, I'm extremely happy with with my bass growth, right? At 100%, I'm really, really happy. So if I've got a bass that weighs 100%, that drops back to 93%, it's not, you see what I mean? It hasn't fallen out of a good range, a healthy range. It's gone from exceptional to, it's gone from A plus to A, right? Um, and since it's at A plus to begin the spawn, all right, and here's the key to think about that, right? Let's think about this. Your fish begins the spawn at A plus status, and it's not eating, it's guarding its nest, right? Versus your bass goes in as a stunted bass at 80% relative weight. It's already in a starved condition, and now it's not even going to eat some more during the spawn. Which fish's offspring do you think have a better chance of survival? You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of little tiny factors like that are involved in this pond management, just in a simple pond. We're not even talking like big lakes with 30 species of fish. We're just talking about bass and bluegill, you know. But good question, Frank. I would say, yeah, he's definitely losing maybe 5%. I'd have to measure it. I don't even care about the males anyway. If I can figure out they're a male, if I see that they're a male, I'll fillet them. That's, they become, if I could skew my bass population to 80% female, man, that would be great. Even 90%. I don't need 50% males. And I don't need anywhere near close to that. And they actually, the way these fish hatcheries are going, they're going to give me that capability. I've seen a couple of all female bass populations. Actually, I'm going to hopefully get up there and get one. I talked to David Trucks. We went over there last year and did a little bit. That was on the Patreon page, and I didn't really advertise it too much, but I got to do some consulting with David Trucks and his older brother. You probably are familiar with him. His name's Derek Trucks. Plays guitar. Well, Derek's got this awesome lake in Georgia that's got an all-female bass population, and they've been having a little bit of trouble with it. And I went and looked at it last year once, but I got to go back and look at it again this year. So we're going to do an in-depth YouTube video on that one, unless Derek says don't put the video on YouTube. But I don't think he'll have a problem with that. And even if he doesn't, we can still talk about it. But I got to meet Derek and Susan, and just some of the coolest people. That was a crazy story, actually. That was one of those things that makes you wonder, again, you have science and religion, and in that area, that gray area where things blend. I will tell you this story. This is interesting. So I said, Derek Trucks' younger brother, has been following the page a long time. I've noticed him there for a while. And then he contacted me, and I met him. But then I got to meet them. They were not on tour, so I got to meet Derek and Susan. So a couple of years ago, my mom caught brain cancer, passed away. But during her process of dealing with that nightmare, she was pretty sick and kind of stuck on social media, and this space became her world towards the end, just because you can't do anything, go anywhere. And one of her I don't know, frenemies from Facebook made a comment that she was going to see a show. Now, this probably would have been 2020 or so. And my mom was like, "Oh, who are you going to go see?" And the snarky response that she got from the so-called friend, I guess it was about, "Well, I'm sure you wouldn't know who it was." And mom was like, "Well, I don't know. I mean, I do keep up with music. I mean, who is it?" And it was a Tedeschi Trucks band. It was Derek Trucks and Susan Tedeschi. And it insulted my mom, because she's like, "Of course, I know who Derek Trucks is, right?" And I don't know, 6-8 months after my mom passed away, I'm standing in Derek Trucks' backyard talking lake management with the guy. You know, isn't that's one of those weird things, man? That I don't know, man. Whatever. It was crazy. I couldn't tell him that story at the time. Maybe this time I can tell him that story. But at the time, I wanted to tell that story, but my mom, I couldn't talk about my mom, you know. But that was really interesting. That's one of those. I've had a few moments in my life where things like that have happened to me, and that was definitely one of them. All right, what's Frank yammering on about again? You catching carp with corn, and the bullheads get it first. Yep, I can see that. So they don't get you. So here's the whole thing, Frank. Stop fishing with corn, right? Don't do that. You won't have that problem anymore, right? Go get a real lure, like for muskie. You need that, or maybe like a nice 3/4 ounce rattle trap. You can catch some pike. You know, if you don't put corn on the bottom, you don't catch carbagey fish like that. That's like a rule. All right, so back to our relative weight. Um, yes, 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 and yes. You're a smart guy, Frank. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. We get older as we grow up. Um, you know, just try to take it one day at a time, man. I've had classmates pass away, man. I just turned 51, and you guys from high school, 51 years. That's all the years they get in their life. Because actually, I just feel like I'm starting to do good. This just like I kind of feel like this is going well, and I couldn't imagine it as be the end of your life. So I don't know, man. I try to live every day like it is, though. I try to think about it like live in the present, be in the present, and be positive in the present. Try not to be negative in the present. There's Lord knows there's enough negativity online to go around for all of us twice. So I try not to add to that, and certainly try to help folks with their ponds. That adds some good karma to the world, right? That's the thing, karma, man. What's up, JP? Welcome in, man. Um, There goes Frank talking about seasons again. Frank, you got to move south. We don't have so many seasons here. You can just fish. Frank's, what was it? What were we talking about last night? That was so funny. Oh yeah, you're in your what are those things called? Where they cut it in Star Wars, the tot. Why can't I remember that? But I did it again last night too. And then as soon as I got off, I could remember exactly what it was called. All my Star Wars trivia goes away. Frank has to like cut open animals and hide inside for the warmth, like on Star Wars, where he lives in Canada. um, he's like Luke Skywalker. He comes out to catch carp on corn, and then goes back inside the cavity of a grizzly bear to stay warm. That's how you have to do it in Canada. It's a hard life there. I appreciate it, Frank, man. See, 53, man. What's up with that? That's ridiculous. And I don't know. Yeah, Tauntaun. Thank you. Thank you. I'll put it up there. Frank lives inside a tauntaun and a grizzly bear. When he can't find the tauntaun to live inside, he has to go for the grizzly bear kill, because that's the only thing close enough. That's the only animal up there tough enough. Everything else is too easy for Frank to kill. He's got to go for the big bear kill. So it's fair. Have you guys ever seen a grizzly bear for real? I see a grizzly bear, I just start to cry like a 7-year-old girl that fell off her bike. I don't want none of that. I saw one in Montana one time that was so big, just you could see him like their body like has this shimmy to it and the fat for they've consumed. 900-pound nightmare. I've seen some big black bears in the forest here, no doubt. No doubt. I've seen some big boys in there, probably 600-700 pounders. They don't move fast because they don't move for anyone. They walk and look, and they just got a different attitude. The smaller bears are skittishy. Excuse me. The bigger bears are not. But yeah, we have quite a few bears around here. Oh, I don't mean to miss your question. I'm just missing your question talking. Brown. Oh, there it is. Weird question. Let's see what we got. That's pretty much what I'm doing right now, Brendan, when you think about it. All right. So let's break it down a different way. If I in my well, let's just use a 1 acre pond. The math is easier. I got a 1 acre pond and I start feeding it, or I don't feed it at all. So we're in our parts of Georgia, even in Dublin, where you are, or where I am, where the pond is, it's about the same. It's not that much different. Say 100 pounds of fish in that 1 acre pond. Okay. And we stock the same what we did. We can stock 40 bass per acre. We're going to get similar growth. We're just going to have less fish in there that size, right? But we'll still have a good pond. The bass will still grow. The balance is still good. So when I put a feeder on there and I start popping that feed off twice a day, and those bluegills start consuming that feed, now instead of having 100 pounds of bluegill in that pond, I've got 300 pounds of bluegill in that pond for those bass to feed on. It triples the amount of forage. Okay, so that is steroids. That is exactly because it's not steroids in the fact that now I guess I could medicate the feed and get them to grow even faster, but that's just going to get to ridiculous amounts of money because the high protein feed it's getting up close to I think it's more than you can only get one bag with $100. Let's put it that way. It's not over $100 a bag, but I think it's close. But that's the performance. That's where the performance goes, and that's why I tell guys that's where you want to spend your money, because if you get a tape measure and you go out and measure those fish, and you know what you're talking about, like we're learning about here, we know what we're talking about, and we want measurable results in bass growth. Like we had, like this year, we know that bass was 5 inches in 22 when we stock it. He's swimming around 4 pounds right now. We know there's been 2 growth seasons. We know that bass grew 2 pounds a season. We know it because we watched it. That's what I call a measurable result. And it's simple because we can measure it, right? Did we stock that bass? It's tagged. We can run a scanner on it. It's got a number. It goes boop like an item at the store. Did we stock that thing in 2022 and it's only grown 2 inches in 2 years? No, it's grown just fine, right? So that's what I mean by measurable. So if we want a measurable change, the feed option, what we're doing right here is steroids. That's how you use money and grow it and change it into bass and do it the most cost-effective way possible. Not with feeding other shiners, shad, not with bringing other forms of fish in there, not diversifying, none of that. None of that. I'll get all that. If I wanted a diverse forage base, I'll diversify it. That'll be dependent on where it is, the shape of the pond, the goals of the pond owner. A lot of factors there, but I don't mind having a little more diversity in the pond in the form of like threadfin shad or some stuff like that. Just a few other select species of fish I can deal with and manage around, and sometimes encourage, sometimes not encourage. Like I said, this is a highly, highly variable situation, and every single pond is different. But to answer that question that I missed, sorry about that, Round. Um, the performance enhancing drugs is in the consistent feeding every day. Just put that feed into those bluegill and fatten them up. All right. So now you got a bluegill that's like 40% heavier than it should be. So when that bass eats it, it's getting a meal and a half, 2 meals. It's like a 2-for-1 special almost. But on the bluegill that don't get eaten, they're healthier too, right? They're bigger and healthier. How does that translate? That translates just like we started this with the bass discussion. That translates back into egg production. When a fish has extra energy, it go and it's female, that'll go into producing extra eggs. So that extra feed equates to extra more forage being born next month by that bluegill population. See how that works? It's a cascade effect, tropic effect, domino effect. I can't think of any more effects. Cause and effect. One more. Got it. Yes. Yeah, well, move past that one. The tauntaun. Thank you, Alex. My brain's working again. Frank came through with the tauntaun. Brown's laughing at something. Brown's being rude. Bears are scary. All right, I'm just getting caught up. Sorry. Have I seen a skunk ape? Here we go. Now we're talking, boys. All right, so I have not seen a skunk ape. I have been looking for them, though. I have not seen them. I've always been looking for cryptids, man. I've always, I don't know, man. You never know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because it's really all those people making that crap up. But I'll tell you another story. I told you a story about La Rockstar. I'll tell you a story about a wolf. A couple of years ago, I'm going to work. I was working for my buddy Bart. He's a guy with a long beard. We fish together all the time. You guys have probably seen him. He's a pool man. So after I sold my business, I didn't really want to like be in business, like run a business anymore. I just wanted to like go to work. So it didn't really plan it that way. It just kind of worked that way. Bart had a business and I had been a pool man before, and like I started helping him like 1 day a week. And then that turned to 2 days a week. And then that turned to like 3 or 4 days a week, sometimes 5. But that was a cool job. I like being a pool man. It's pretty chill. Nobody really mess with you much. And as long as you do what you're supposed to do, that's how I got going in the pool or in the pond business anyway. But anyway, I'm driving to the pool job. I don't know, 8 years ago or so. Excuse me. I'm going south out of Commerce, Georgia. And it's a hill. The road's going down like that, and the cow pastures on the right, kind of fell off. They were hilly, and the real pretty area right there. You could see a good bit down through there, and just like the Piedmont area of Georgia, not quite the mountains, but still very hilly. And it's just like a nice cow pasture. And I drove down through there every day, sipping my coffee, going to work. It's probably like 8. Well, this particular day, there's a baby cow, a little calf in the corner. There's like the pasture was split. There was a fence that, the fence went along the road, and there was a fence that kind of went 90 that, so they could put the cows up on the top pasture or the bottom pasture. And there was a baby cow in the corner, and it was straight up having a panic attack. I mean, back and forth running. The animal was terrified, which is strange, right? And as I'm driving down the hill, I'm not going that fast. You can see in the pasture out maybe 20 yards past that cow, there are other cows standing in a semicircle, kind of out around away from the calf, were other cows, like had circled the wagons, literally, probably like 8 cows were standing in a semicircle. And I was like, what in the hell? And I'm in the break at that point, and I'm looking, and I just made eye contact with this thing for like 2 seconds. Like I just like 1,000, 2,000, it's gone. Like because it was lowering itself like that into the broom straw, and it was a wolf. Well, it had yellow eyes. It looked like a husky mixed with, it was like brown and black, so it kind of had like a, I don't want to say Rottweiler. It was just like a Rottweiler German Shepherd coyote, but it was 140 pounds. I mean, this thing was, it stood a foot up out of the broom straw, was 36 inches high, and its back was higher than that. Like I said, I've seen a lot of animals. There's no wolves in Georgia, is this thing though. There's wolves in Yellowstone National Park. If it was a coyote and it was the meanest looking thing, it looked like hell on earth. I looked at it just right in his eyes, and those yellow eyes, and it had teeth. It almost like, I didn't really look at the teeth clean. I could just see them because it had them bared. And it reminded you of those like the Chihuahua teeth they get. They're fake, and it looks like the dog is about to attack you, on the little cute toy dogs. It had its teeth bared like that. And it was the meanest looking animal. My first instinct was to get out and shoot it with a deer rifle. I tried, but as I was stopping the truck, I was pulling over on the side of the road to stop. I was going to shoot off the road. I would have gotten in all kind of trouble for doing that if I did it. But the rifle wasn't in the truck, so I kept driving. And when I got to town, there was a cop parked in the parking lot of the bank. I actually stopped and reported seeing it. I said, somebody's going to lose animals to that thing, and I don't know why in God's world, how it got here or what it is. It looks like a wolf though, and I never heard anything else about that. But I know what I saw, and that's the only reason. Stuff like that, I keep an eye out for the skunk ape, man. I might see him. You never know. I saw a wolf in Georgia. Frank says he hasn't seen the brown bears. Thank God. You don't want no part of that, Frank. Cougars? That's not good either, though. Mountain lions will get you. I'm not too scared of the old black bear, though. They're all right. We got some big yotes around here, too, man. Bushy-tailed, long, pretty coyotes, really, but every once in a while, the pack will wake me up. I literally live out in the Ocala National Forest, so I can hear when people are walking around. It's so quiet around here in this little cabin. You can hear everything in here and around. And once you get used to it, it's so different. When I go back in town and there's horns and traffic, and man, I hate it. Frank, what size pond? If I'm going to do it, that's a good question, Fishing MD. All right. So the question is, what's the best size pond for growing bass? Got unlimited money, right? I can do what I want to. I win the Powerball, right? I'm sitting on like $900 million or whatever, and I can do whatever I want. And that would be the situation that I would. That's exactly what I would do too, is go get a lake. First thing I would do is probably make sure it's in Georgia, because I'm most familiar with the laws and how to get things done in the state of Georgia, because I work there the most. If I wasn't in Georgia, I'd double check all my local regulations and laws and make sure that I could do what I wanted to do in there without too much hassle or having to mitigate and pay and lose money just to pay off the government. I'd want 25 to 50 acres of water, 60, if I got more than that, it's okay. It would be okay if it was bigger than that. I really wouldn't want it too much smaller than that. It's about 25 acres just based on my shocking experience, things just riding around doing it. That's where bass ponds will really get special, a little bit bigger than, really small. Not saying you can't have really nice fishing in small ponds. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, like, on days where you cranking up multiple 10 pounders and consistently producing really good fish for a long period of time, 25 acres and up is usually where you want to be. I say I don't want to get over 50 acres because that gets to the point where even with an electrofishing boat, because like I said, I won the lottery, so I can just go buy a shocking boat, buy 2 shocking boats or 3, whatever. It doesn't even matter how many you have because the amount of effort it takes to control that 50 acres of water. Do you know what I'm saying? Um, to me, almost wouldn't be worth it. So my management strategy would fluctuate depending on mm, how much control that I had, and probably if all right. So let's look at it this a different way. Not knowing what it looks like and just giving you a roundabout kind of best way I would do it, best management practices, vague without seeing it. Drain and restock your pond or small lake every 10 years. You'll always have good fishing that way. You'll always keep the balance pretty close that way. You'll always have the least amount, like, because it's balanced, because there's grass carp, because you've done everything right, and you have a maintenance program of at least a drain and restock every decade. You will have a significantly better pond from a fish production standpoint, from a health standpoint, than trying to bump around what Mother Nature's bumped out on you. I guess is the best way to put that. And if I owned a pond, that's exactly what I would do. Every 8 or 10 years, just drain it, expose the pond bottom to the air, let that sit there nice several months. Usually in the winter is when you do that. If you do it in the winter and let the bottom freeze, that'll crack all the aquatic weed seeds, and that's actually a pretty decent way to naturally control aquatic vegetation from growing in your pond, is by lowering it in the winter. Lower it halfway in the winter and let the ground freeze. You'll have less weed problems that way. It's a natural way to control, or it's an old school pond management trick, really, to save you money. Farmer's trick to save money on chemicals. It's where I learned it from. Winter drawdown. But 25 to 50 acres, and I'd stock it and manage it very similar to what I'm doing right now. As a matter of fact, I mean, there's a couple different ways I could do it. It would depend on where it was and what was going on with it. Um, Ideally, it would be fed, not fed by groundwater flow, not fed by a stream. Basically, I would have enough land uphill that the water fills the lake that comes to it naturally through the ground, and I have no access for a stream, fish to get in there, or during floods, the stream doesn't come around in there. That would be great. That would be ideal, because then I can really control what fish are in there. The streams that come in are what bring you the trash fish, but bring you everything we've been talking about. Bring you the crappie, they bring you the bullheads, they bring you the streams are what bring you everything. It's like a highway. All right. If I missed anybody else's questions, man. It's very good. It's a very good point, Frank. You start getting really unhealthy fish, and they're not able to breed at all. That's exactly right. I like that too, man. I listen to the Sasquatch Chronicles too, man, at night sometimes. I'm not going to call any of those dudes a liar, man. Not happening. Oh, me. All right, let me go back through. Oh, there's still stuff coming up. Hold on. Here we go. I'm just going to click through them so I know I don't miss anything. That's what I keep doing is I think I'm reading all of them and I'm not. I think they're coming through in groups too. It's weird tonight. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, dude, I'm sure it was in between Jefferson and Commerce, Georgia. And like I said, it was, I don't know, man. It was a big 100-pound animal. It was. I've seen coyotes. Coyotes are not 100 pounds. Coyotes don't stand with their backs that high up out the top of broom straw like this. It was a biggest, meanest looking critter. Like I said, my first instinct was kill him. Just kill him. Shoot him with 308 from the road, take the ticket, kill him. Like once the cop sees him, there's no way he'll be mad at you. Like, cause I know that property. I know that there's nobody back there. There's just a power line back there, but there's no homes or anything back there. And if I was the farmer of that land, I would want somebody to have shot that sucker, whatever it was. If that was a coyote, that thing was the biggest, meanest coyote I have ever seen. Like, a rolling ball of butcher knives. You didn't want none of that. Uh-oh, Anthony saw a UFO. The government leaked document of the TR. I don't know what that is, though, man. The TR-3A. Is that the Tic Tac thing that they tracked? Did you see the Tic Tac thing? We were just talking about this today with my neighbor, man. Me and Dave were talking about this today. Do y'all think there's UFOs? I don't think there's UFOs. I think I think it's like, what was that old movie? Planet of the Apes. It's just old technology from another civilization that was here before us that they found, and they're just not telling you. It's like the Navy guy tracks the thing, the Tic Tac's going like 1,100 miles an hour, and they're tracking it with the missile radar thing for a second, but they don't know what it is. Yeah, I believe that they did track that. I believe the Tic Tac was there. I do believe that, and I believe they did track it. I believe that too. I do not believe they don't know what it is. That part I don't believe. Sorry. They know what it is. Somebody knows what it is. That dude might on the radio might not. Somebody knows what that damn thing is. All right, Brown says he's got a trail cam of a bobcat with an 8-foot rattlesnake. Dude, you do need to send me that for real. That bobcat killed that snake. That bobcat was probably like, listen here, Holmes, I got the quickness for you. An 8-footer too, boy. Those I have seen. Now, for those of y'all, how many folks we got? 10 folks. For those of y'all not in Georgia, where Brendan lives, and to where I live, right here in Central Florida, right? It's Sandy, and an Eastern Diamondback rattlesnake lives here. And that is, I'm pretty sure that's the most venomous snake in North America, but they're not that abundant. You don't see that many of them. Some places you'll see more than you care to, but for the most part, you don't see too many of them. But the ones that you see, like you said, 8 feet. Yeah, I've seen one 8 foot before too. I've seen one sitting in the road that was that long. Its head was like 2.5 of my hands, like split it. Like that's the width of the top of his head like that, and then half that much more, the snake head, right? His eye was jet black like that, like looking in like a shark, just jet black. And I'd say the size of a dime, his eye, and huge, just the biggest rattlesnake, man. I'd say his body, the thick part of his body was about the same, about my thigh, like that. I mean, he was big snake. I was driving from Valdosta to my buddy's house to go hunting, and it was on an old, just a regular paved road, and I thought it was a retread, um, like slung off a tractor trailer laying in the other lane. So I went past it in my car thinking I was passing a tire that was laying in the road, not a snake. And it was as I was passing it, I realized what it was and slammed on the brakes and backed up to back over it, but I couldn't. There was kids. There was a trailer park right there by it. Kids playing, people riding four wheelers and stuff. But it got across the ditch, it got into the woods, and it got away quick. But I got a good look at that's our biggest rattlesnake. Its tail was on the yellow line in the middle of the road, and its head it barely had a little S in its body, and its head was on the white. It was as long as the entire lane of the road as I went by it. Yeah, it was a big eastern. You don't see them that big usually. I've never seen one that big again. I have seen they have timber rattlesnakes here too. I have seen a 6-foot timber rattlesnake. That was a big cane break. Oh, Anthony's got another question. Let's see. You talked about draining them and starting them over. What's it look like in preparation, labor, and tools? Well, each one of those projects, Anthony, are completely different. They never go the same. But generally speaking, like if you get lucky, your pond was built properly and it's got a bottom drain on its main drain structure. And you're going to want to exercise that. It's usually like a wheel that sticks up somewhere on the drain structure. And it's a good idea to go out there and open that thing up about once a year just to make sure it'll turn. You don't have to open it all the way, just open it up, a few turns, make sure it drains, and then turn it back down and make sure it closes. A lot of people just close their drains off and then never exercise those wheels, and they'll get seized up down there and you'll never get them open again. But if you are lucky, you can get that bottom drain open, and most ponds are built with one, and it'll just drain itself. Um, if you're not that lucky and that thing seizes, or a lot of times, like sometimes it was built with it, but the wheel just completely rusts off of it, so it's just not there anymore, and you're not going to use it. It was there, but now it's not, or it was never put there to begin with. That gets a little trickier, but it definitely can be done. I would get 4-inch PVC pipe and build a temporary siphon drain. Begin siphoning the pond. Now, again, I'm assuming it's probably like a pond, like a small pond, like we're talking about, not a lake. If it's a lake, I'm not siphoning jack. I'm talking like ponds, if you're like a 100-acre lake or something like that, even a 20-acre lake, I need the drain to open. You're not like getting pumps and renting pumps and building siphons on huge acreage, but if it's just a couple acre pond, yeah, like under 10 acres, you can drain that with siphons and go rent a temporary pump and just drain it down and get all the problem when you get the siphon will pull most of the water out of the lake in a few days usually, but it'll break and it'll leave a big puddle of water in the bottom. And the entire idea of draining the lake down is to eradicate the fish population. I don't want any fish left in the lake when I restock it. So if I'm left with puddles, I've got to treat those puddles with a product called rotenone that kills the fish. I got to get rid of them. If I can't get rid of the fish, there's no point in draining the lake. I'll just try to manage it as best I can. So that brings me back to the original point of open up the bottom of the lake, drain it dry. Now I know there's no fish in there, and I didn't have to spend any money killing any fish, any labor killing any fish, or chemicals in the bottom of the lake killing any fish. You save thousands of dollars just by draining the damn thing dry. Like I said too, it's actually really good for the pond bottom to let it be exposed to air once in a while is okay. It's good for the soil chemistry. So there's a ton of variability in the cost, just depending on how you have to get the water out, But once you get there, you get the water out, you don't have any fish. when you restock, like the total fish cost for Sugar Hill was about $1,500 for 2.5 acres. So, 3,000 bucks for five, and you could figure it out from there. And we've got a pond that we can control, we can manage very cost effectively going forward, right? Whereas if you don't do it this way, you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars every year. Like, yep, there's cost in draining it. Yep, there's cost in restocking it. Yep, there's cost. But after that initial cost, like the next 10 years, it's almost on autopilot. There is no cost. And you've got world class fishing, like the best fishing you could possibly have versus something that's like 5 to 10 times more expensive with mediocre fishing anyway. Kind of the same old. Again, I can't find a measurable difference, even though I spent a bunch of money. That's just been my experience with it. I would drain it and restock it, so I know when I spend my money, I'm spending my money the most cost effective way possible. Like, I want to be able to go out there, or my guests to go out there and catch the biggest bass the fastest I can grow it. Like, that's what I want. That's my goal. Then I'm draining and restocking. Um, that's how I get it there. Did you guys see the 15 pounder at Bussy Break? That place is only 5 years old over in Louisiana. Pulling 15-pound bass out of that's 1,000 or 1,200 acre lake though, but it's only 5 years old. They just stocked it in like 18 or 19. It might be 6 years old. It's not an old lake though. We've been using it as an example. Last year, the MLF broke every single huge fish record they had on like a 4 or 5 year old lake, however old it is. Somebody has to correct me on that and look it up. But the point being is, a lake doesn't have to be very old in the South to crank out monster bass. It has to be balanced properly. That's why Bussy Break is producing 15 pounders. It's a new lake. It's experiencing new lake effect. It's been balanced perfectly. It's 1,200 acres, and they did a great job restocking it. And they did it right. They hit it right on. As they say in golf, they hit that one right on the screws. Congratulations to the state of Louisiana, to biologist guys on Bussy Break and their 15-pound bass that fast, man. It's a great job. They deserve all the credit in the world. They did it right, and they nailed it. Birds, got a birds phobia. What's Frank scared of? Go back up here. Spiders. There's a lot of other things to be afraid of. Spiders, snakes, and gators. We've got all those things too. Yeah. Brandon has horses at his house, man. He's got like a lot of horses. I don't trust horses either, though, Frank. I'm kind of with you, man. I got on a now. See, look, I don't know what I just did, but I just did something. Sorry about that, boys. That's what happens when old guys try to navigate the computer. I think I'm still here. Or am I still working? All right, it's counting. I think I'm still here. All right, that looks right. I think I got all the questions too. Oh wait, there's one about otters. What do we got here? Speaking of eradicating fish, a couple of years ago, otters. Mm-hmm. Mm-mm. Yeah, that happens, Anthony. Otters are otters are how do I put that? Brutal killers. Serial killers, stone assassins. Otters will kill a fish just to kill it and go catch another fish and kill it and put it next to the other fish that it just caught and just like make a pile of dead fish just because it can. Like, it doesn't really think about how cute an otter is. Think about the cuteness level of an otter, right? I also want you then to equate that level of cuteness to evil killerness. That's what you're dealing with, right? For every ounce of cute that it is also that much evil killer killing your fish. And I mean, just to kill, it's like, ha ha, is this your fish? Ha ha ha, ha, killed it. Is this your fish? Ha ha ha, killed it. Just for no reason. If they would kill a fish and eat it and be like, oh, I'm just an animal in nature and I ate your fish and now I'm going to go on my way, I don't have any problem. That's okay. Like a great blue heron. Every once in a while, you'll get great blue herons around your feeders. They'll be in your pond. They'll be on your, and you'll be, all right, great blue. I know what you're doing over there, man. And he'll look at you and you look at him and he'll squawk at you awkwardly and be mad and fly across the pond. And then you go over there and then he'll squawk awkwardly again. And after a couple of days, he'll leave you. He'll leave your pond alone. Not so much with the otter. Then there's usually two or three. And I've seen ponds, honestly, and had conversations in Texas, especially, where you can't have a fish population. Like you just every time they stock at the otters, just like are like, yeah. Did you like that? Yeah. How'd you like that? You like me killing your fish? I'm gonna kill all these too, and they just keep killing them. They just keep killing them. Oh man, look at Brown stepped on a pygmy. I got a pygmy right there, man. That thing was in the road. Get my finger going, all right. That that's a local boy there. He was a nice one. I'm glad I did not step on it. Oh, I see what's going on. When I push that button, it jumps to the bottom of the page. And sometimes the bottom of the page is a lot further down there than I realized. Learning, learning. Yes. Yes. Remember, just however cute, just as murderous, maybe worse, actually. All right. So let me make sure my little skip didn't skip anybody's question. The herons have a vendetta against Jermaine. Well, the one thing we can learn about our heron friends is they make an honest living. Like you generally do not see the heron in a place that the fishing is horrible. You know what I'm saying? Like there's generally like a decent fish population. A heron are there to eat. You know what I mean? They're not there. They're not doing anything else. They're there to eat. And if there's nothing to eat, if this whole place is full of frogs and tadpoles and there's not some good fish in here for me to eat, the heron bug out. They ain't going to hang out. I've noticed that about them. I know, man. Somebody should screenshot here. Screenshot that picture right there. See, that's my good smile. I like smiling like the kids do in like the second grade and stuff in their pictures where they don't know how to smile yet. And it's just like, oh. Those are my favorite pictures. My buddy took a picture like that of his daughter on the Easter Bunny. It's so funny. She hates it. She gets so mad. So cute. Let's talk crawfish. All right. We're talking crawfish now, boys. Anthony's running this one. Anthony, I should just have you split the screen. Come on. All right. He's in MA. You get confused with the multi. All right. At what depth do they burrow? Not too deep. 8-10 feet, probably about the most. Anthony, the first place I'm going to send you, and when the crawfish questions start coming at me, because I know a little bit, I'm okay with them, but I did a Tackle Talk podcast. Oh, hell, shameless advertising, Andrew. Tackle Talk podcast. And on that Tackle Talk podcast is called the Debate Breakdown. And on the bait breakdown, there is a crawfish expert. And he goes on for a couple hours about crawfish. I learned more about crawfish and wouldn't take away from that man because, like I said, he is a dang expert, doctorate, science, top of his game, crawfish guy. So I highly recommend you listen to that podcast for all for learning about crawfish because I learned a ton from it, and I think everybody would. Whenever you get around an expert in their field, you're going to learn something. So that being said, crawfish will be coming out when the water temperatures hit about 55 degrees. So depending on where you are around here, we've passed that a while back. North of here, not so much, but it's coming. And the crawfish they'll be coming out of the ground. And the interesting part about the crawfish, I think that jumps out in my mind that I can remember from school anyway, because like I said, I'm no expert. They come out at 55, and that is the crawfish spawn. They begin their spawning process. But a crawfish spawning process, not like a fish spawning process where they mate and then there's a bunch of baby crawfish everywhere. Actually, they mate and the female holds that sperm. I can't remember how long it is, but it's months. And then baby crawfish are like attached to her for a long time. And then you have baby crawfish much later in the year than the 55-degree spawning time. So I just remember like listening to like how the crawfish spawn, just the biology of the spawning, and thinking, wow, that's not the same as what I kind of thought it was. You know what I mean? Because of that time differential when the fish actually come off, or when the crawfish are releasing off the mother versus when they were actually fertilized, or long periods apart. As they emerge from the ground, there'll be different colors. Around here, they'll be red because they generally burrowed in clay. Well, in Georgia. Around here, I'm not sure what color they be. But they'll be filtering. The reason why they're red in Georgia, I know this, is because if they're in clay, they'll be filtering kind of the dirt, kind of the water in the dirt, and because there'll be zooplankton in there, and by filtering that clay, this is what turns their body a little bit red while they're in the burrow. So I think the one good thing about crawfish colors is you don't have to get married to any of them. I would rock with all of them. Definitely, certain places have colors that are, most of the crawfish are a certain color. But whenever I've set traps and caught them and stuff, there've been a multitude of colors from kind of, brownish orange to green pumpkin reddish to little, just every kind of really different color. A lot of times the crawfish won't be the exact same colors. So you got a lot of variability there with the colors. But I hope that helps. Yes, they do, Frank. Yes, they do. Yeah, please do, man. Andrew's got a great podcast going over there. I think you'll learn a lot from a lot of the guests over there. It's a good place. And Frank says he needs to catch up on Tackle Talks. Yeah. I've been on there 5 times, man. 5. Actually, that's what gave me the confidence to start coming on here because, well, the practice going on that is I've been on so many podcasts now. I'll just, you want me to go on a podcast right now? Let's go. I'll go do it. But Andrew's doing well with his podcast, and I think, like I said, being asked back 5 times gives you confidence that people like listening to what you're talking about. So that and the other 30 or 40 invitations that I've had is repeat people coming, and I don't care. I'll be glad to go and talk to people. The idea is to spread the word to get people a little more educated so we can have healthier bass populations. Um, I don't see the point in just piling that information. I can see how, like, from like maybe like a business perspective, you would want to pile your own information up in your own place that only people can access, from you, right? So you can monetize that. That's like the what capitalist kind of ideology of that, I guess. And that makes sense to me, definitely. But at the same time, I've been doing this a long time, and I know that the ideas that we're trying to talk about here aren't widespread enough. Like, I've got to get people out of the catch and release mentality before I can even get them on board the drain and restock the pond mentality, right? Um, so I just kind of have to play it a little differently, I think. Yeah, herons are cool, man. We have so many like wading birds here in Central Florida, especially here in the Ocklawaha. That's my next project. I'm going to take the boat and just film the river. Maybe do like a long format film where I just ride. I don't even know if I'm necessarily going to talk. I think I'm just going to ride, and just so people like, even if you just scrubbed it, and jump the video a little bit and watch just different parts of it or whatever, or just, I don't know, put it on at Christmas time and watched it, with background music or whatever, where you're just whatever you're not, need anything like anything in the background, just where you're having conversations, whatever, put that on and be able to watch that boat ride through there. It's old school Florida for sure, man. I mean, it is some kind of place. I've been in a lot of aquatic habitats, and I've never seen one quite like it. It's very unique out there. So anyway, I don't know. Maybe nobody will watch it, but that's my next move. We'll see what Anthony's got going for us here. Night herons. You boys in your conversations, I get lost in it. I'm gonna just drag it back and talk about UFOs. Anthony, do you have anything else for me, my friend? We're going on an hour and a half tonight, and I know you said you were going to pile in some questions, so if you have any more, pile them in there. If you guys have any friends that have ponds or can share this around, thank you for all 12 of you who are here tonight. I certainly appreciate it. It's running my numbers up nicely on the monetization part of this. And ultimately, that would be great, is to come on here and chit chat and be able to consult with people and make a few bucks too. That'd be awesome. But at the same time, I'm not, if that never happened, they can take your monetization. I'm having a hard time talking tonight. They can take that away from you for, they already did it at Instagram too. They used to pay me over there, but they used to pay everybody over there, like just for posting on reels, and they decided they just weren't going to pay anybody anymore. So they can take your monetization from any platform, including this one, for whatever reason they feel like it. But I don't know. I feel like I've been fortunate on YouTube and got a good audience of folks, and people do come through and watch this stuff and do get good questions, and it does help folks with ponds, people in real world situations. I'm really dealing with a lot of folks now. Be doing some more how-to stuff to I'm an Amazon influencer. I got approved for that too. So I'll be able to do product promotion videos on Amazon for um like the products. Like it'd be like a video that I do on any of these other ones, but the product that I'm talking about will actually be tagged and you can just touch it and buy it at Amazon. So I'm gonna be doing pond algaecide videos, stuff like that. Showing guys how to use those products they can get from Amazon and save some money on their ponds that way. Thanks, Cliff, man. I appreciate you. I think so too, bro. I think let me just put it to you this way. That's what gives me confidence being asked on the podcast so much, especially guys like Andrew and Rudd and Oliver Nye and just the list goes on and on. Um, Aggressively average angler guys have had me on a few times. I mean, honestly, I hate to start naming people because I always forget people and it makes me feel bad. But um, there's dudes out there getting paid on YouTube doing, lesser quality work than I think what we're putting in right now. So I'm pretty confident it'll work out. Thanks, Cliff, man. I appreciate that. You heard it on Tackle Talk? That's cool, man. Yeah, Andrew's a good dude and doing a good job too, doing a real good job. Um, he's good at what he does. Let's put it that way. Um, I had my first little experience be on the other side of that with Mike. If you guys haven't watched that yet, you got to interview Mike Booger for Bullshad, and that was interesting, being on the other side and like having to find questions and keep it going that way. I enjoyed it though, and that's another thing, boys. I have got some folks lined up, man, that are really cool. Like I never anticipated like doing that, but I've got so many people coming on that I'll just have on like this that we'll split the screen like I did with me and Garrett. And actually, I think me and Garrett are going to go live again probably next weekend. And I'm going to go live probably midweek with Clint too. Some of these things are starting to pile up, so I just want to get them recorded and just get the content down because the growing season's starting. It's about to get busy. But there's a lot of cool content coming along. Got to learn to sit up straighter. My back. Bad posture. But I certainly appreciate the compliments, boys. I try to do my best. I really do. You know. Um, Going back to our conversations in karma, I do believe in that. I believe you get back what you put out every time. And just try to be sorry, I'm reading while I can't read and speak at the same time. That's the one thing I see why guys have help on these pods too. So when they get into these, they get into like reading the group. Oh, what's Frank got going here? 6 degrees of Debo. Oh yeah. I know, right? Yeah. See, there's another one I forgot to mention. Debo. How many times has Debo had me on, man? I mean, probably like 5 times too. Onto his. I mean, Debo's I got not really a pod, I guess though. Though, what was that can be considered? I never really thought about that. Is this a podcast? Oh no, this is not a podcast. This is Logmouth Bass podcast. This is Limb Brim Lobcast. This is a logcast. That's a good one. I don't know. That's funny. Yeah, but Debo is a good dude, and you know, you, I've picked up a lot of people following along who've, from just chatting and being involved with other people's pages and just trying to help them out, And I try to do that with my page as well. None of this social media stuff. I'm not charging anyone any money to post stuff for them or working any kind of deals or approaching anybody like that. My social media is, like I said, I feel like I've got to use it to spread the word. So I use it like Tackle Talk, you know. I go on Tackle Talk, did a good job on the podcast. It helps me. I help him. It's a symbiotic relationship, you know. The more popular he gets, the more popular I get, and vice versa. So I've just used the social media that way. If you help me, I help you. It's not about money. All right, Anthony. He's done. Thanks for coming in, man. Chain sticker. I forgot. That was a good one. The old stickerel. The limb brim. Uh, this is a live stream that identifies as a podcast. Okay. Is that what these things are called? Live streams? They're not podcasts. If I had another person, would that be a podcast? Or that's just a live streams? You got more than one person. I don't know. Stickerel. I got to write that one down. It's a good one, Bowles. All right, gentlemen. I'm getting a little drowsy. My coffee cup is dry. And I got up early as crap the other day. My schedule's all jacked up too. Question from Cliff. Coming in hot. Bellows Gill question. All right, what do we got? How do you feel about the 3.8? All right. And what size flashy would I use? 4 hot. And G Crack recommends a 3. But you feel like the 4 or you feel like the 5? Yeah, well, I use the 4. I know I used the 4 the other day, and it worked pretty good. You can also like drop shot that sucker, nose hook it. Another effective way to fish it too, and you bust it is well, actually, if you put it on a weightless, screw locked, thin wire 3/0 hook, but make sure it's got a screw lock on it, and that little thin wire 3/0 hook will give it enough weight to make it fall, but it's not a weighted hook. You know what I mean? It's just a standard hook with a screw lock. Make sure you use a screw lock and don't hook it back on itself like a Texas rig. It'll just bust as soon as you get a bite on it, you'll bust the head. It'll be ruined. But the screw lock will last a lot longer. But I fished that 3.8 just on basically on a 3/0 hook, a screw lock hook, and let that hook just barely let it fall. It's good technique. I also use a 3.8 clip about, I don't know, that much of it off the end of it, and use it on as a chatterbait trailer or jig trailer. It's worked pretty good for me using both ways. I like it as a chatterbait trailer because it's flat on your chatterbaits that don't have a weed guard. Or in Georgia, we fish around a lot of sticks, a lot of blowdowns and stuff, a lot of lemmy, like pine lemmy stuff in there, and there's just a lot of stick cover. And chatterbaits that don't have a weed guard get hung a lot. But I noticed if I use the 3.8 and lay it in there flat, so it sits on the chatterbait in there like that, it won't roll as much and get caught on sticks as bad. Sure, Cliff, man. Glad it helps, brother. All right, boys, I'm going to do one quick scroll back up, make sure I haven't missed anybody's stuff. Chain stick roll. You guys make me laugh. All right, boys. It was a good weekend. I enjoyed chatting with y'all twice this weekend. And we'll be back next weekend. Actually, no, I'll be back midweek probably with Clint to talk about Sugar Hill Outdoors, and then be back next weekend with Garrett to talk about shocking again. I'll holler at you later.